Hello and a very warm welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of HT City Spotlight. Spotlight is where we put the focus on things that matter the most to you. And in current times, one of the big questions revolve around mobility. How are we traveling? Are we traveling? How are we taking care of ourselves when on the move? And in the current situation, is buying a car the right decision? And are pre-owned vehicles in times of social distancing the way forward? To tell us about all of this and a lot more, we're joined today by Stefan Knapp. He's director at Volkswagen Passenger Cars India.
Good
Stefan, thanks
afternoon.
for talking to us today.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Right. We're also joined by Ms. Hetal Gandhi. She's director at Chrysler Research India.
Good
Ms. Gandhi,
afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
right. And last but definitely not the least, we're joined by Mr. Vinkesh Gulati. He's Vice President at Federation of Automobile Dealers Association. He'll be telling us about all of this from a dealer's perspective. Mr. Gulati, thank you to you too.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Right. So let's get this started. My first question would be to you, Stefan. In current times, the last time we sort of sat down and assessed the what's happening in the automotive industry, things seemed very challenging, and yet there were several ways forward. How has it been in Volkswagen since the last time we spoke back in June?
Well, things are still very challenging. There's no doubt about it. In particular, the unstable situation in some local areas, like, for instance, the lockdown in Bengaluru, is representing issues for the business. It's pretty difficult to predict, but in principle, the business has turned around. We saw in July a further improvement on the consumer sentiment as well as in the car industry. So a nice movement. And when it comes to Volkswagen, we are pretty happy to see that our newly launched models been highly interested and demanded. So we have been able to sell more cars than in the same months last year of our vehicles. So it has been seen a nice traction. But again, for me, the most important fact, obviously, as a sales and marketing responsible, is my network. And they're heavily dependent on the after-sales business. And the lockdowns really represented a big issue for them to ramp up the business to pre-COVID-19 levels. We are at around 75 to 80% of the level which we had last year. And we definitely need to ramp up the after-sales business in order to make sure that the backbone of my Volkswagen network is stable, which is the basis for the success of the Volkswagen brand in India.
Right, right. New cars obviously promise a lot of excitement in the market, but pre-owned cars in current times may just be a practical bet. Have you seen a change in perception towards pre-owned vehicles here in India from pre-COVID days to current situation?
Yeah, definitely. I think there was a growing trend anyhow already in the last, let's say, 2 years. We saw that the organized sector has gained a lot of momentum. People really willing to go more to an organized retail chain, like, for instance, das Weltauto, what we are offering as Volkswagen. But the need for individual mobility, in particular in the time of COVID-19, the people, they want to avoid using public transportation, rather using their own mobility where they feel safe, has tremendously grown. And I can only quote a number from Volkswagen. We have sold 4 times the level of used cars than we sold in the last comparable date. That's really a growing trend, even to the extent that it's difficult to source vehicles from the market because customers, first of all, don't want to give their cars away. They rather go for an additional ones. And then there's a lot of growth for first entrance in the marketplace. Yeah, so it's definitely has picked up very well. And I see, anyhow, we had the discussion already. I believe in used cars very much as a very important revenue stream for the network, as really taken off and will be also taken off in the next subsequent years very much.
Right, that's fantastic news coming from the Volkswagen camp. But let me get Hetal in here. Hetal, tell us more about the overall outlook for the used car business in India. In one of the Chrysler reports in June, if I'm not mistaken, it was mentioned that the used car business is actually going to significantly rise. There were clear indications. So, tell us what led to those indications and what is the situation now overall?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Yes, we do track sizing of the used car market, and uh, we believe that the last few years have been turning up positive for the used car industry. Last year was also a positive. I think this is a typical consumption psyche where you tend to downplay during crisis times, given the uncertainty linked to incomes, and also how much are we going to continue in the pandemic crisis. Uh, 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 People are worried about how much they want to spend, and therefore we do believe that the downplaying would actually help used car business. The first estimates for FY20, which was the last financial year, also indicate that the used car business actually ended up growing in India as compared to the new car business, which showed almost a double digit drop first time in many years. So, a clear indication that downplaying would be helping, and the need for personal transportation, which was being even pointed out by my other colleague on the forum, indicates that the preference for cheaper vehicles that is satisfying my need would be the first point used by consumers to go in for purchase of vehicles.
Right, but is there a case of, in current situation specifically, where the two of them are cannibalizing, potentially possibly cannibalizing each other? So people are not really going for high transaction purchases, like, say, for example, new vehicles. uh, is that going to have a detrimental impact? It's definitely working for the used car segment perhaps, but one going up, the other falling. Is there a sort of a inversely proportional play at work here?
It's very difficult to pinpoint what actually has cannibalized what. And when I say downplaying, it starts impacting multiple segment categories. For example, within the new car business, also there would be downplaying from the larger cars to more smaller cars. Also, it has been always evident from data. And if you look at the last 3 months' volumes vis-a-vis same period last year, you will see that the proportion of small cars has actually gone down in the total sales volume of car manufacturers. So that clearly indicates that any slowdown is having a higher impact on the hatchback segment category. Here, there are two categories of people: A, who will hold on their purchase and say, "I'll buy at a time when things turn better," and B, who is in dire need and therefore will say, "Let me buy something cheaper," and he may go for a better refurbished car that is existing in the market.
Right.
So we have clearly seen that impact.
Right, Stefan, on that note, let me get you in. Is that something that you're saying at Daspat Auto as well, where people walking in prefer smaller options of pre-owned vehicles rather than the bigger, say, SUV category vehicles?
First of all, perhaps let me comment on what kind of customers are coming. We see actually the highest proportion, around 72%, are first-time buyers. So these are really people who are looking for individual mobility, of safe mobility. And then they obviously have budget constraints, and the average transaction price is around 3 to 3.5 lakh. Interesting enough, completely different also from my experience in US and Europe, that the age of the cars is pretty high. Yeah? So we are talking about 6.5 to 7 years cars, which we don't have in Europe in the dealer network. Normally, you're talking about 4 to maximum 5 years cars. So they are relatively older vehicles, which we are going to sell. So it's not 100% cannibalization. I think we are opening individual mobility to a wider range of people at the moment. Yeah. In my case, I have an averse development from what Metil was saying. We have a growing demand on the A0 hatch. So our Polo is really being sold very, very well. So people are getting in there, but also here we see a lot of new entrants. So really first-time buyers. And also we have to put it into perspective. I think she's in principle absolutely right what she was saying. But in our case, we are more catering to the higher middle class customer, which is relatively, let's say, unaffected in quotation marks. He's also affected. He moves down his budget levels, but he's let's say comparably less affected than a Suzuki Maruti customer, for instance, who went for a Wagon R or something. So, but in principle, on coming back to the used car element, I see a lot of new customers coming. And that is obviously for us as a small brand. I'm not like Mr. Gulati. I'm doing Mahindra, for instance. I'm relatively small. Is good for us because we get a new customer base into our organization, and we can also utilize our service facilities for body and paint, things like this. So it's a little bit different, but in principle, I would definitely support what Hetty was saying. There is also cannibalization effect in the industry visible.
Right. Let me try to look at it from the dealer's point of view, and that's where I would get Mr. Gulati here into the picture. Mr. Gulati, what are you seeing at the ground level from the dealer's perspective? There is clearly an emphasis on from OEMs to move towards digital platforms, and for most parts, in current situation, it seems to have paid off. Um, Dustbelt Auto also has a website and a mobile application, and people can just log on there and make their transactions for pre-owned vehicles. But what are you seeing at the ground level from the dealer's perspective? What sort of steps are being taken to ensure safety and to ensure that there is a genuine interest in vehicles?
See, Rundu, actually, if you talk on the digital front, you have given me a very wider scope of question first. So if I talk of used vehicle, obviously, all the OEMs have come up with good digital presence on the used vehicle part. Talk about Maruti, Mahindra, like First Choice or True Value or Hyundai, everybody has that. And the apps are also there. No doubt this COVID has actually increased the utility of those digital experience. And because of the social distancing, customers' fear psychosis on not moving out, it is helping the dealers also a lot. But one thing to which is very important is in India, a car purchase, used or new, any of that, it is a big decision for a family. It's not one person decision. So obviously, with all the increased digital presence, digital requirements and use, maybe the touch points of the dealership with the customer has reduced because of all those digital benefits what we have already launched. But still, in the end, the customer still wants to come down to the showroom to see the vehicle. And in the used car, it is more prevalent because for a new car, it's actually been warranted and proven. There are a lot of road tests and a lot of reviews on the cars. But for the used car, every single used car is unique on its own.
Right.
So, how much kilometer has been driven, or what's the engine quality, or how is the interiors, or whosoever was the first owner, how has he maintained it? So, a lot of things gets in. So still, I agree, digital has helped us a lot, and because the people at home they were working from home, or because of lockdown they were at home, so they got a lot of time to go through all the websites. And as now Mahindra First Choice does all the products, it's not only Mahindra. We even purchase Volkswagen or Maruti, so he has a bigger scope to check on the website. He can on a true wheeler true value Maruti website, he can find any other product also. So he
Let,
has a lot of time at home and he has done through. But once
let me,
he finalizes, then he has to come to us.
on that note, let me get Stefan back into this. Dustbelt Auto is also a multi-brand platform for pre-owned
Mm.
vehicles.
Yep.
Um, in India and perhaps the world over, but specifically in India, people can always have certain sense of misconceptions when it comes to pre-owned vehicles. A lot of doubts, like Mr. Gulati mentioned. I mean, every pre-owned vehicle is a unique vehicle, so the need to actually check the vehicle thoroughly as a customer, prospective customer, is perhaps a lot more. So, at Dustbelt Auto, how do sales representatives, executives address those concerns that prospective buyers may have?
Actually, that is the big opportunity of our organized sector. Now, we have last year, I think, around 18% of the used car business was routed through organized sectors, and we assume it's going to be minimum up going to 25 to almost 30% in the upcoming 2 years. The advantage is that we can offer them a very structured process. Yeah, so we have a thoroughly checklist of 100 checkpoints, actually 190 checkpoints. We are giving 6 to a 1 year warranty on all the vehicles. Yeah, the customer gets a really clearly evaluation possibility, very transparent. He can put his car in an app where he evaluates his own vehicle, gets a clear price based on clear factors, and at the same time also we are offering, showing them the evaluation of the vehicles we have on stock. So I think that gives a lot of the worries of the customers away. Am I getting a good deal? Is there a problem with the vehicle? Might I have an issue later on? All these worries which you have around this, yeah, is tackled in the organized sector with our very strict adherence to the processes we put in place. I think this will be for us a big asset in the future, and is already now as people move into this sector. Yeah. So that is, I think, definitely tackled. Yeah.
And all of this
also, perhaps I can add on Mr. Gulati. For us at Volkswagen, can clearly say digital tools will be the future. There's no question. Yeah, but always including our network. Yeah,
Right.
we always route all our activities through our network. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's exactly what he says. Customers prefer to watch and look at the car. They want to test drive the car, and at the end, they also want to go to service. They need the trustful cooperation of our dealer partners. Huh? So it's not a model like we are just excluding it, as it's an omni-channel model. You have to have this in nowadays, and COVID-19 is pushing us into this very much, in contrast to what had happened before, to be honest. But we always move it through our dealer network, because at the end of the day, the customer wants a point of contact. He wants a subject matter expert he can relate to, because we're not talking about a book. Yeah, we're talking about a car which is an average in a million rupees. Yeah, which is a big decision for a family.
Yes, it's interesting that both of you mentioned about the actual touch and feel of a vehicle, whether it's a pre-owned vehicle or a brand new vehicle, but all cars require some sort of repair from time to time and need to be serviced. So, Mr. Gulati, if I can just come back to you once again, how have things picked up in the last few weeks or several months as far as service networks are concerned? A lot of OEMs now are providing pick-up, drop, and again, service networks have gone digitally. But at the dealer level, how are the precautions that are being taken helping these dealers in terms of getting the cars back in for servicing and for repairs?
So start answering your question. So we are happy we are back to what 70% stage of what pre-COVID was. So that's a good sign for us on the service side also. But yes, it's a very challenging time. It's not just the customers, it's even our staff who are very skeptical, and the fear is there in every person who is there. And think of the technician who is working on the vehicle and he doesn't know who the customer is and where has he been. So it's a dual process for a dealer to manage both of the sides. Lucky for us, the authorized dealers have very good guidance from the manufacturers. Volkswagen also has a full to do, what to do and what not to do, and the dealers are abiding by that. And so obviously the sanitization of the vehicle once it comes in, and then the time taken to do each job with the gloves and the mask and whatever the process are, it's very neatly defined to the minor details which are happening. And obviously we are trying to reduce the customer touch points, so that at least if a customer is willing, we are offering the pickup and drop. If he even wants to come in to the workshop, so we are restricting that it will only one or two every vehicle a person should be there. Or there are some gaps between, and the face shields are there in our manpower, so that he feels that we are taking care of the vehicle. And then there are things which we already doing, but now it is very important, like putting in seat covers and knob covers and the steering cover, where he feels that even if technician is using it, touching the vehicle, there are covers which will be removed, and he'll get again a clean vehicle back. So obviously it's a dual problem for us, maintaining the hygiene for our staff also, building their confidence and building the customer's confidence also, that everything. And one thing I'll add it, so if you talk of the used vehicle here, so whatever we are doing for a new vehicle, we are doing for the used vehicle also. So that is the benefit what we organized players give. So like Mr. Stephen said, that the benefit of being dealing on the used car in a authorized dealership, that's the biggest thing. Because whenever we take a vehicle, obviously it is certified, there are assurances, warranty and all that. But with the COVID thing, the safety point or the on this point also is also covered. So
Right.
there are not most sales are still happening in the unorganized sector in India, but whatever is there in organized, it's still safe. So people should go and try only organized player because of the current fear things what we are going through.
Right. Actually a very good point, because the amount of safety checks, the precautions that are being taken as far as a new vehicle is concerned, is the same as for pre-owned vehicles. So that makes a really good case for pre-owned vehicles. Let me take that to Hetal. Hetal, just give us an idea about what's driving, according to you, what is driving. You mentioned a little while back about economic uncertainties, pay cuts, but the situation, as long as it's uncertain, is it working in favor of the pre-owned business? And if there is in future some sense of certainty, maybe there's a vaccine or things sort of become a little more stable and predictable, do you think that's going to actually bring down the demand, the popularity of pre-owned vehicle?
I believe there will be again a number of factors that will contribute to this, and also how the next few months pan out. There are two things that we need to remember, that even if we have, say, a vaccine and things start going back to normal in terms of the amount of work that we are going to do or the way we are going to work, even if it gets into a business as usual scenario, you will still face a situation where there will be some amount of income uncertainty that will remain in the minds of the people till the time the economic activity stabilizes and till the time consumption actually comes back to the market. So it's in a way a circular loop, takes some time. And we would say that 6 to 8 months for things to stabilize is a good enough time to give, and that would be the time that would be very good for the used car business, because people will continue to remain cautious, and for all personal needs that they want to satisfy, they'll harp more on low cost options than the higher cost ones. As things start coming back to normal, you will see normalcy coming in terms of the mix between new cars and used cars. But what this entire process of 6 to 8 months will do is what was rightly pointed out by Mr. Stephen, that the share of the organized players is expected to go up. It has already gone up last year and is expected to go up again this year. And therefore, your ecosystem for the used car business and certified used car business will only evolve much more, building up confidence in people who were postponing personal vehicle purchases altogether because of constraints in terms of their affordability. And you may see certain percentage of those people being there on a continuous basis added to that used car market. So I see a a strong positive over the short term, which is 6 to 8 months, and structurally also with large organized players gaining share. I see a long term structural positive impact also for the Indian used car market.
But I'm a, yeah. So actually, your last few words cleared my doubt, because I was just going to ask you if you're talking specifically about the Indian market or a global perspective. But since it was about the Indian market, give us a sense of what's happening the world over. Because in pre-COVID days, and my research showed me that countries like the US and China, two of the biggest markets in the world, they have very dissimilar trends as far as used cars are concerned. In the US, for example, used cars, pre-owned cars, sell a lot more than new vehicles, but in China, it's the other way around. Give us a sense of what's happening in the world market globally in current times.
Yeah, I think looking at these two markets is one of the best way of looking at it. And China did evolve as an auto industry very differently than the way US evolved, or even the way India evolved. In India, also the share of larger global brands, either where there were technology tie-ups that existed, or direct presence of global brands has been higher, and as a result of which the age of the vehicle has be not a doubt in the minds of the people. Also, Indians tend to use their vehicle much longer because while the age of the vehicle may be high, in terms of kilometers, they don't really exhaust the vehicle as much as the international users do. So, a
Right.
combination of this two always helped the Indian used car market evolve and move more towards the path of a US kind of a market. But the way the market was structured, which was more fragmented in India than in US, in a way brought about some constraints in terms of quality. The current pandemic and also of entry of organized players, certifications, all of this is going to help the Indian used car market evolve much more towards the path of US. I think in China also now, things are changing. There are certified cars which are coming in. Share of global brands has gone up substantially in China over the past few years, and therefore doubts linked to age of the vehicle have also subsided. So confidence levels of a Chinese consumer has definitely gone up. So there is traction that is seen in the used car market, but it will take some time for China to reach, where India is, and same for India to replicate the US kind of a model. And there are a number of other nuances like business models that exist in terms of leasing versus outright purchase, which has also brought about a difference in the way, in general, Indian consumers have bought vehicles, whether new or used.
Right. Right. Stefan, do you agree with what Hetal just said?
No, absolutely. I think she's spot on. For me, what I'd like to stress is the using models. If you go to the US, for instance, you have a very high portion of leasing, yeah, or you have PCP as one of the solutions, which is very strong there too. So people tend to use their vehicle rather than owning their vehicle. In India, still, it's a pride point. It's my vehicle. I'm gonna do what I want with my car, and I don't want this another one to own, and I don't know what's happening if I get the car back. But
Right.
also COVID-19 will exactly help us also here in this market to push those models. So what we, for instance, launched at Volkswagen, a very strong leasing offer together with a partner, and it has seen a lot of traction. So people are, like in the music industry, are now going more and more in the direction, I'd rather use it. I don't want to invest so much money, don't want to bounce so much capital, and then I give the car away and I get, like Indians love, a brand new car in 3 years' time. So this will come, and this is only can work if you have a functioning used car market. Because a used
Right.
car market at the end of the day needs to take those vehicles back. And on top of it, what we see, at least what I saw in my 3 years in that lovely country, is the focus on residual value of a lot of players has tremendously grown, because leasing models are only viable if you are having your residual value under control. So these
Right.
are basics which are moving us into a continuous growth of used car market, and will move us into the direction of the US. In the US, it's exactly what we see. China is somehow a little bit different. Even though now we see used car market also growing tremendously, because for the need of, let's say, affordable mobility, it has been always a country which has been very much focused on new car, because there was no density, first of all, and at the same time no density combined with a pretty high purchase power. The purchase power you can't see in India so much, because you have by far the lowest prices in car industry in the world in India. Yeah, it's the most competitive market, at least I've been in. Yeah, so because the purchase power is not comparable to the levels, you just have to see. In China, the biggest or the best seller is a car called Volkswagen La Vida, which is a Passat comparable vehicle, which is 5 times the average purchase price what you sell in India. So therefore, it was always more bound into new car because they could afford, in quotation mark, whereas in India, the purchase power obviously is not comparable. So I think to come to the point what you said in the beginning, we will see a peak in used car, but we will see a continuous growth in used car, because the offer will grow, and we will see also age going down, and then people go moving in a higher, let's say, category of price band too. Yeah. So if you look
Right.
in Europe, for instance, a lot of customers opt for a 3, 4 year, even 2 year car coming out of a rent a car. We don't have this model here in India so much. Rent a car
Right.
companies are pretty small still, self-driver, how you call it here. So there's a lot of movements in this direction, and I'm pretty sure that we have a fundamental base for growth. As Mr. Gulati said, all the OEMs are investing into very, very well-organized used car operations.
Right. Right. I think we'll just we've spoken about pre-owned cars and new cars and buying. That's been the general theme of the discussion so far. We'll take a user question right now that we're getting. So we have a question from Shashwat Mangal who's watching this, and he says, "Is it a good time to sell my old car? This is not because of financial reasons, but because the car is just old." So is it a good time? And this question is actually really open to anybody who wants to answer. Is it a good time to get a valuation on used cars? Because obviously, if somebody wants to buy a pre-owned car, somebody also has to sell his or her car.
Definitely, the demand is there, so it's worthwhile having a look. I think there should be interesting prices available for him. And as a Volkswagen guy, it's always good to opt for a brand new Volkswagen. So it's always time to go for that. So I encourage him to come to one of our fantastic dealerships and have a look, and he will get a very decent price.
Right. Also, there is another question. This one comes in from Aarti Shekhar. She says there is a possibility for vehicle scrappage policy to come in now. This is more for EVs, but I'm not going to go into the EVs. Neither does she. She says, with a possibility of vehicle scrappage, is it a better idea to wait for the policy to come in or sell the car in the used car business? Again, an open question to whoever wants to answer.
So I'll do that. So practically, vehicle scrappage policy will come with the year of the registration. It doesn't will not be linking to the used car business actually. So I don't know exactly what comes. Maybe for Delhi it comes for 10 years for diesel and 15 in petrol, and maybe all India level it will be 15 years. That is the time of registration which is valid in the car. So, but normally the used car changing hands happen from 4 years to 6, 7, 8 years. So actually, scrappage wouldn't affect the decision of selling a used car or buying a used car, I feel.
All right, fair
Okay,
enough.
to everybody.
Right. Also, now it's time to also address the shared mobility question. Hetal, if I can get you in here. Uh, Shared mobility, and I'm not talking about mass transit options, I'm talking about radio cabs. Now, those were booming those have been booming for quite some time, but unfortunately for them, in COVID times, that business has sort of suffered quite a lot. Now, does the boom in pre-owned cars segment, does that again have an adverse impact on shared mobility options? What do
So
prices
there are
say?
there are two trends which have emerged over the past few months. A, people who were owning a personal vehicle were not using it so much during weekdays, especially in the metro cities, and they were actually using the shared mobility options during weekdays and were using their own vehicles more towards weekends. So the average kilometers that personal vehicles were running, had actually come down with shared mobility options coming in. Uh, because of sheer convenience. So, whenever I want, I have a vehicle back home, but I really don't want to use it on a daily basis. That was the option that, people in the large urban areas were opting for. Has the pandemic have had an impact? Definitely, the impact is huge. Do we believe that it is going to take some time? I definitely believe that till the time vaccine becomes a reality, it is going to take some time to actually accept or go back to the shared mobility options, and that is when they would be actually using their existing vehicles back home, or they will be if somebody doesn't have a vehicle, you will see opting for small cars which are new cars, or used vehicles which are available to them. So in a way, my utilization of my shared mobility cabs is going to get substituted by what's happening in terms of purchases, but it's going to be a short term phenomenon, clearly. I think there is nothing that can substitute convenience that technology can provide. And for local commute from point A to point B, if I'm going to have affordable options in place, then that is going to be a trigger point. I only believe that players who are in the shared mobility space are therefore only going to invest faster in terms of adopting technologies like EV that can improve the affordability point much faster for transit from point A to point B, and that is what will then again trigger the shift towards the shared mobility end. we don't want to go into the EV space, but clearly that would be the trend that would emerge over the next few years.
Right, right. EVs definitely are the trend, but keeping the focus back on the pre-owned cars segment, Stefan, if I can ask you about the difference, if any at all, that you see in how people perceive pre-owned vehicles in urban India vis-a-vis rural India, or say tier one towns, cities to tier two, tier three cities in India. Do you see a difference in patterns, questions, their conception of a pre-owned vehicle?
No, I would not say that there's a huge difference. I think there's the same questions, same doubts about the quality of the vehicle. Has it been checked? Is it how safe am I for a year or half a year? What is the price? Is the deal good? All these questions also arise. There might be a difference in terms of budget availability. Yeah? So what the customers are willing to pay, depending on the rural area you're talking about. But in principle, it's the same structure doubts what is existing.
Right, right. So
So I
let's.
like to add here. See, I agree to Stephen. Yes, whatever he's saying is right. But what we have seen normally in tier two, tier three town, the ratio of C to C purchase means customer to customer is very huge in the
Right.
used car market. So as you go to metro or tier one town, you will find organized players managing this, or even unorganized brokers also. But most of the places, as you go rural, it's more to do that a customer selling it to his friend or a villager or one. So the ratio increases there. So as a business, for us, used car in tier two, tier three town doesn't give so much return, but we because we don't even get vehicles, we are not able to buy vehicles to sell. Actually, there is a demand, but the procurement is really bad in the as you go rural, the procurement is a big issue.
But staying with rural in pre-owned business, reliability and trust, these are the two big factors. Uh, do you, in your opinion, Mr. Gulati, do you think that reliability and trust factor is more when it's person to person rather than, say, dealer to customer in general? Like you said, C to C is underlines trust and reliability more. Is that a pattern?
So one, yes, that is the pattern, and second, obviously there are a lot of players in which are moving around. So like in urban or semi-urban places, even the person living above your floor doesn't know you. So when the relationship is not that great, how can you think that he'll trust buying a used car from you? So
Right.
overall, the how the people move around or how the people see each other in the locality in the socials, that also is defining the used car thing on the front.
But
So
but
maybe
that
in urban,
sorry, but that
so
opens
maybe
up
in
the
urban, the customer will want to go to an organized player and check with the how the vehicle has been serviced and get a certificate from an authorized service station than the customer who is selling the vehicle.
right. So there is a scope for, say, for example, a Dust Belt Auto to actually establish a firm foothold in the rural segment, because by chance, on the side, if there is something that goes wrong with a used vehicle that is purchased, if I've purchased it from, say, another person, I can't hold that person accountable to the extent that I can probably hold a structured organization in that sense. So would you agree that
I
there
agree.
is a lot of scope for Das Welt Auto and similar
I,
brands
I,
to
I,
be able?
I, see- I, in principle, I agree this C2C is definitely more applicable to the rural area. That is no doubt about it. But I see the same potential there. Yeah. So customers are informing themselves very rapidly today. They will definitely use the tools what we are offering in order to evaluate their vehicles, because it's their value and they want to get the best price. So they have a base to negotiate with the other customer in this area. And secondly, for instance, Dehradun I would not consider, for instance, as a tier one, tier three. Is one of the best, for instance, in Volkswagen's world, used car partner we have. He's on the rural areas, very strongly established there. So I think we will see definitely a move versus organized also in the rural. Definitely, there's more family ties up. There's more, you know your neighbor. You're fully right. In Mumbai, where I'm living, you hardly know our neighbors. Yeah, so this mistrust factor is there. But I think in also rural areas it will grow. And one point is essential for me. Still, it's a first-time buyer market. Yeah, and what we see, at least at Volkswagen. Yeah, so people are then looking at an organized center. I see actually a big potential for the rural area too. Nevertheless, I fully agree with Mr. Gulati that this is a customer to customer. This is very, on the countryside, oh, you have this vehicle, can I buy it? What is the price? Yeah. Even though I rather see it at the moment, at least what my experience is, more in the family. Yeah, I give the car to my daughter. I want her to be safe. Yeah, this is at least in the customer group I'm playing. Yeah, so it's more within the family circle rather than to give it to an outside customer.
Right. All right. This has been very informative. So my key takeaways from this discussion so far has been that pre-owned vehicles make more practical sense in current situation, and they're also, as Mr. Gulati said previously, they're as safe in the precautionary measures that are being taken are perhaps as many as in a new car. And yes, they require a lot of checks, and people would want to experience and drive the vehicles themselves. But in current times, they may be the best bet forward. Stefan, if I can just ask you one thing that you can tell me, not as somebody and not as an auto journalist, but as a prospective customer, what would you tell me before I decide that yes, pre-owned vehicles is the way for me to go forward?
I would always recommend you to really search the market. There is a fantastic offer structure available. There are multiple chains available. Even though I'm a Volkswagen guy, obviously I have to tell you that Weltauto is a good platform, but I think also the colleagues from the other OEMs have very good platforms. Inform yourself. But for me, the crucial aspect has been also, I love to also buy old used cars, is go to your dealership first, make a test drive, make sure that you have a touch on the car, and look at the sales consultant who's selling the vehicles at the end of the day, because that builds a very trustworthy cooperation. It's always worthwhile, from my point of view, going through a dealership, giving the feeling what you have there. Are you feeling safe? Are you feeling comfort? Do you have the trust? Because used car business is very much about trust, and therefore inform yourself, go to multiple dealerships really to get a feeling, because at the end of the day, a relationship to a dealer at the end will be, in a lot of cases, a lifetime relation. And that is essential that you pick up the right choice there.
All right, fantastic piece of advice. I'm convinced. Let's see if people watching this are convinced to make that practical decision of getting the pre-owned vehicle. I would like to thank all three of you for giving us an insight into the pre-owned vehicles, and this may just be the way forward in times which are unfortunately a little uncertain. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us today, and also thank you so much to all our viewers who took the time out and watched this session. Stay tuned to HT City Spotlight for more such insightful discussions.
Thank you very much, and stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.